The sound of a hand slapping against a chest echoes through the marble lobby, sharp and sudden, like a door being slammed on a man's pride, and for a split second, the whole building seems to hold its breath. This floor is for executives only, the security guard says, loud enough for everyone to hear, loud enough to turn a quiet moment into a public one. The man in the wrinkled jacket freezes in the open elevator, his worn folder slipping in his grip as laughter dies around him and polished shoes stop mid-step. All eyes landing on him like a spotlight he never asked for. The lobby is a palace of glass and steel, sunlight pouring through tall windows, reflecting off floors so clean they look like water. It smells like coffee and money and something cold, something untouchable. People in sharp suits glide past, their phones pressed to their ears, their lives moving faster than the man standing there, small and still, like he's been dropped into the wrong world. His jacket hangs loose on his shoulders, sleeves too long, collar bent out of shape, like it's been through more days than it can count. His eyes stay low, fixed on the marble floor, like he's trying to disappear into its shine. A woman near the desk lets out a soft laugh and covers it with her hand, pretending it was a cough. Someone whispers something that turns into another quiet chuckle. The security guard's hand stays raised, a wall made of flesh and authority. The man nods once, slow and heavy, and takes a step back, the kind of step that feels like a step down, like the floor just dropped beneath him. The elevator doors begin to slide closed, soft and gentle, like they're trying to spare him for what's happening. But the moment is already carved into the room. Across the lobby, a janitor's cart squeaks as it rolls over a thin line between tiles. The young black janitor pushing it stops. He's got headphones around his neck, a mop still dripping water into a small plastic bucket that leaves a trail behind him like a quiet path. He watches the man in the elevator, then the guard, then the people who pretend not to watch at all. His shoulders rise with a breath he didn't know he was holding. The building hums around him, air vents whispering, phones buzzing, heels clicking, but inside his chest, everything goes silent. He pushes the cart forward. The wheels squeal again, loud in the quiet, turning heads, pulling attention away from the elevator and onto him. The guard looks over, brows tightening. The janitor doesn't rush. He doesn't run. He just walks, steady, slow, like each step is a choice he's making on purpose. Water drips from the mop onto the floor, tapping out a soft rhythm. When he stops, he's standing between the man in the elevator and the guard, not blocking, not challenging, just there. "Sir," he says, his voice low but clear, carrying in the open space. "You can walk with me." The words hang in the air. Simple, quiet, heavy. The guard blinks, caught off guard. The people in the lobby lean in without moving, like the room itself is listening. The man in the wrinkled jacket looks up for the first time, really looks up, and his eyes meet the janitor's. There's something sharp in them, something alive, something that flickers like a question and an answer at the same time. The guard hesitates. His hand lowers, just a little. The janitor turns, pushes his cart forward, and starts walking toward the elevator. The man steps out, falling into pace beside him, their shoulders almost touching. They move past the desk, past the polished smiles that don't quite reach people's eyes, past the invisible line everyone else seems to know not to cross. The whispers start again, soft and quick, like sparks jumping from one person to another. Inside the elevator, the doors slide shut with a soft thud, sealing them in a box of mirrors and light. The janitor's reflection stares back at him from every wall, a dozen versions of himself looking nervous, looking brave, looking unsure. The man stands beside him, closer now, close enough that the janitor can see the small lines around his eyes, the way his jaw tightens like he's holding back a thought. The elevator hums as it begins to rise. Neither of them speaks. The janitor's hands rest on the handle of his cart, knuckles pale. He wonders if he did something wrong, if someone will call him out, if this moment will cost him more than he can afford. His heart beats loud in his ears, louder than the cables pulling them up, louder than the soft music playing from a hidden speaker above them. The man finally turns his head. "Thank you," he says, and his voice is calm, smooth, not like someone who's been embarrassed, not like someone who's been pushed back. It's the voice of someone who's watching, measuring, taking notes in a place no one else can see. The janitor nods, unsure what to say. Everyone deserves to get where they're going, he answers, the words coming out before he can stop them. They sound small in the tight space, but they feel big in his chest. The man smiles, just a little, not with his mouth, but with his eyes. The elevator passes floor after floor, numbers lighting up above the door, climbing higher, like they're rising into a different world. The janitor thinks about his lunch waiting in the break room, about the message from his sister he hasn't checked yet, about the rent that's due in a week. He thinks about how he almost didn't say anything, how easy it would have been to look away like everyone else. When the elevator slows, the man steps out first. He turns back, studying the janitor one last time, like he's trying to memorize his face. Have a good day, he says. The janitor nods again, watching him walk down the hall, blending into the world of glass offices and quiet power. The doors close and the elevator begins its trip back down, carrying the janitor alone now, his reflection still trembling in the mirrors. Back in the lobby, the whispers grow louder, turning into questions, into stories, into guesses. People glance at the janitor as he steps out, some with curiosity, some with something like respect, some with something colder. He pushes his cart past them, the wheels squeaking the same way they always have, but the air feels different now, thicker, charged, like the moment he just lived is still floating around the room. He doesn't know who that man was. He doesn't know what just started. All he knows is that for a few seconds in a bright, cold building, he chose to walk beside someone who was told he didn't belong. And somewhere above them, in offices with doors that close softly and decisions that land hard, a test had begun to move through the halls, quiet and unstoppable, like an elevator climbing to a floor no one is ready for. The morning sun filters through the towering windows of the building, hitting the marble floors with a hard, cold glow, like light magnifying every imperfection. The lobby hums with voices, footsteps, the softest of elevators, ordinary sounds, yet somehow heavier today, heavier with expectation, with whispers that curl around corners and under doors. The janitor walks in pushing his cart, mop dripping quietly into the bucket, water pooling like small, reflective warnings across the polished tiles. He can feel the change in the air, sharp and cold, brushing against his neck like a warning wind before a storm. Something shifted yesterday, and now it's moving through the building, creeping into the hallways, wrapping around cubicles, perching behind office doors. Eyes watch, judgment silent but heavy. Rumors crawl along coffee lines, curling to the cubicles like smoke. Did you see him yesterday? Someone whispers. That man, he wasn't just some nobody. Laughter tries to break free, but falls flat, caught in the tension between curiosity and fear. Managers polish smiles like weapons, baring teeth that should show warmth but instead bite. Supervisors bark orders a little louder, snapping pens and gestures into place. Try to remind the floors that structure still exists, that rules still matter. But the janitor feels it. Something in the walls has changed. The air weighs on him, heavy as wet concrete. He moves carefully, sweeping the marble tiles, each stroke of the mop like a heartbeat trying to keep him grounded in a space that suddenly feels foreign, scrutinizing. Hey! Watch the floor. A supervisor snaps suddenly, pointing at a streak of dirt the janitor knows isn't there. His knuckles tighten around the mop handle, white and tense, but he doesn't respond. Words hit harder than the wet wood in his hands. This isn't your space, says an assistant later, voice clipped, eyes cold as they guide him to the back hallway, the passage where janitors belong. He follows, silent, every step echoing off the walls, every glance over the shoulder confirming that no one else would intervene. The marble lines on the floor, the borders of glass walls, the pristine carpets, they are invisible boundaries drawn by power, by fear, by hierarchy, and now the janitor walks against them. He feels each line as though it burns beneath his shoes. Meanwhile, the executives gather in their glass-walled rooms, each one practicing the art of civility like actors in play. They nod, rehearse smiles plastered across faces that are all too careful. Their meetings are a choreography of politeness, of pretending that respect can be controlled, that empathy can be scheduled. They practice nods. They practice small talk. They practice being human for a world that only ever rewarded performance. Behind their tinted glass, they cannot see the janitor, and yet the building bends around his presence, shifting with the tension he unknowingly carries. In the cafeteria, he sits alone, tray untouched. His eyes glance at the clusters of employees around him. Laughter forced, conversations clipped, eyes flicking away like shame is contagious. A woman from accounting hesitates at the edge of his table, then chooses her phone, pretending the world beyond the screen is more important than the moment right in front of her. The janitor watches her retreat, the quiet sting of isolation settling over him. Power is not just money. Power is lines drawn in marble and carpet, in tone of voice, in who can sit where and who can speak when. It hums through the building like a pulse, and he feels it in every corner, in every glance that lingers just long enough to weigh him down. Then he sees him again, the man from the elevator. No wrinkles this time. A tailored suit, shoes polished to a reflective sheen, flanked by silence that follows him like a shadow. The floor shifts under his presence, gravity bending toward authority. But there's a quiet in him that is unlike the others. He walks slowly, purposefully, stopping at desks, crouching to ask the cleaning crew simple questions. How was your morning? His voice carries neither judgment nor expectation, just interest, a subtle human touch that feels radical in this rigid space. People beam. Some stumble over their words, others lie, fumbling smiles like masks cracking at the edges. The janitor watches from across the cafeteria, heart thumping like a drum he cannot silence. He has said nothing clever, done nothing remarkable, only acted with honesty, with instinct, with integrity. And yet, the tension builds, knotting in his stomach like a storm that waits silently at the edge of the city. He watches the man move down the hallways, stopping at office doors, leaning slightly to meet eyes, a ripple of calm following him, shaking the invisible chains that bound the employees. Each nod, each simple greeting, is a reminder that hierarchy is fragile. The janitor's pulse matches the rhythm of the footsteps echoing in the halls. He wonders if the man knows what he's done, if anyone will ever see it. The water drips from the mop, slow and deliberate, each drop at a heartbeat, a reminder that the world measures worth in the smallest of choices. The whispers grow louder now, brushing along cubicles, curling around desks, snaking up stairwells and through ventilation shafts. Did you see him today? Did you see how he walked? Eyes follow, judgment floats, and yet no one dares intervene, no one dares challenge the quiet defiance. The janitor continues, head lowered, hands firm on the handle, but inside him, pride stirs, cautious and tentative. The executives peer through their tinted windows, noticing the man in the tailored suit again, his attention like a magnet bending the energy in the halls. Their rehearsability trembles under something unspoken, a force they cannot name. The building feels alive, sensing the subtle imbalance, aware that rules meant to enforce separation are breaking under the weight of human choice. The janitor senses the eyes that linger too long, the subtle shift in posture as people try to reclaim their authority in the small pockets of fear they still control. He sweeps, he pushes, he moves, every action deliberate but unaware of its significance. Each brushstroke of the mop across marble tiles is a declaration, an invisible signature being written into the ledger of this building. Lunch ends. The cafeteria empties. The janitor leans slightly on his cart, listening to the distant hum of air vents, the click of heels on tile, the muted conversations floating like clouds of tension. Somewhere above, the man in the tailored suit pauses outside an office, gently knocking before speaking. Words soft but precise. I want to hear about your morning. Tell me how your team is doing. The janitor feels it, a subtle shift in the air, the weight of unseen eyes and unheard words. He watches silently as power bends, as authority cracks, as a reminder that respect, even simple kindness, cannot be scheduled or faked. It is chosen, and its choice leaves marks heavier than marble, deeper than money. As the day crawls forward, the tension thickens. Employees walk faster, speak softer, their rehearsed confidence faltering under the gaze of the one they cannot read. The presence of someone who moves with integrity rather than title. The janitor senses the building's heartbeat, a rhythm of anticipation, of unspoken tests and invisible judgments. The storm waits, and everyone in the halls feels it. Some try to ignore it, pretending the air is the same as yesterday. Others shift uneasily, knowing the rules are fragile, the balance delicate. The janitor moves through it all, quiet, deliberate, unaware that each action, each choice, is threading the first lines of story that will bend the world around him. He passes a glass offices. The reflections multiply his image in shards of light. He catches the eye of an intern. The young woman blinks and looks away, suddenly aware that everything is observed, that every small act carries weight. The janitor pushes on. Each drip of water from the mop echoes like a metronome of change, a slow counting of moments that matter. The man in the suit pauses again, glancing at him across the hall, and for a split second, recognition flickers in the janitor's chest. Something is happening here, a test invisible, a story unfolding. The storm is near. The lightning is unseen but felt, vibrating through marble, carpet, and glass. By mid-afternoon, the air hangs thick with tension. Conversations shorten, gestures stiffen. The janitor pushes his cart past whispers, past the murmur questions, past the stares that linger too long. Every step is deliberate, a quiet assertion that presence matters more than title. He does not know how far the consequences will reach, does not yet know how his choice yesterday is unfolding, threading unseen to the hallways and offices, wrapping around lives that believe themselves untouchable. And still he walks, head lowered, hands firm, heart thrumming, unaware that his small act of decency is shaking a building built on polished authority. The elevator dings somewhere above. A door closes. Silence stretches in the halls like a tightrope, holding every eye, every breath, every heartbeat in suspended tension. The janitor feels the weight of the eyes he cannot see and knows instinctively that something is coming, something that will not wait for permission. The storm lingers. The lightning has not yet struck, but everyone in the building feels it. The question is who will bend, who will break, and who will rise when the moment arrives. The janitor continues, mop in hand, water dripping, footsteps steady, and the line in the marble holds, or maybe it doesn't. The day has only begun. The main hall is silent when they arrive. People shuffle into the seats, eyes darting, whispers curling under the bright lights like smoke. The room smells of polished wood, fresh coffee, and the faint tension of anticipation, heavy and pressing. All around, faces are polite, masks of composure stretched tight over uncertainty. The janitor stands near the back wall, hands clenched into fists, knuckles white against his mop bucket. He tries not to breathe too loudly. He tries not to let the small tremor in his legs show. His chest feels too small for the weight of what's coming, the air too thin for the sound of 100 expectant stares. He thinks about the elevator, the way he simply stepped forward, the quiet defiance of a choice no one else dared make. He tries to hold on to that memory, like a lifeline. The stage lights flare, harsh and bright, cutting across the room like a knife. A hush falls, thicker than the walls themselves, and all movement halts. The man from the elevator steps forward, the same sharp eyes, but now the wrinkles in his jacket are gone, replaced by a suit that fits him like a second skin. Every step he takes echoes, bouncing off the walls, hitting ears, hearts, and imaginations. He stops center stage and surveys the room, the hush almost unbearable, the tension pressing like gravity. Yesterday, he says, voice calm but caring, I walked into this building as someone you thought didn't belong. A murmur rises, faces drain of color. Some people glance at their hands, at each other, at the floor, as if seeking an escape from the truth suddenly exposed. He lets a quiet smile curl across his lips, not cruel, not mocking, but sad. The room shifts under him, an invisible current pulling everyone in. I am the owner of this company, he says, and the words land like a hammer. The room exhales in unison, disbelief folding into the air, pressing down like a physical weight. People stare, eyes wide, jaws slack, hearts suddenly aware that the hierarchy they believed in is not what they thought. He walks the stage slowly, letting the silence grow, letting the shock settle like a shadow over polished tables and glass walls. He tells them about the security guard who stopped him at the doors, the executives who looked away, the whispers that carried judgment through corridors, and invisible lines that kept him from being seen. Each detail lands like a brick, building a wall of conscience around every witness. Then, without a word, he turns slowly toward the back of the hall. The spotlight catches a janitor standing there, small but firm, shoulders tight, breath caught somewhere between fear and pride. Every eye follows, drawn to the unassuming figure who dared, who stepped forward when everyone else stepped back. The billionaire points, and the words break through the silence like glass shattering. And this man walked with me. The hall is empty of sound, the silence thick and heavy, falling like a curtain. The janitor's ears ring, his heart hammering. The world suddenly too big, too loud, too bright. Faces turn, stares sharpen, whispers stutter in mouths that can't form words. The hall itself seems to hold its breath. The man steps down from the stage, deliberate and unhurried, and moves toward him, the polished floors reflecting his shoes, his suit, his authority. He stops directly in front of the janitor, height irrelevant, titles irrelevant, money irrelevant. Just the two of them, eye to eye, and the room fades, leaving only the weight of the question hanging between them. Why? The billionaire asks, soft but piercing, as though he is asking the entire building, every person, every conscience, the same question all at once. The janitor swallows hard. He tries to steady his voice, tries to shape words that sound acceptable, that could defend him. But the truth rises first, simple and raw. Because you look like you needed someone. The words leave his mouth like a confession and a gift all at once. They tremble in the air, landing softly yet heavily, impossible to ignore. The billionaire blinks, the corners of his eyes wet. There is no judgment in his gaze, no mockery, no calculation, just something human, something honest. The room feels different. The tension unravels just a little, not gone, but shifting, bending under the weight of truth. The janitor feels the stirrings of power, but not the kind measured by money, by status, by walls or doors or marble floors. This power is quieter. It is steadier. It is found in the choice to act with dignity, to step forward when the world told you to step back, to meet injustice not with cleverness, but with the truth of your heart. The room begins to breathe again, slowly. Eyes that were wide with shock now shimmer with something else, something like understanding. Colleagues glance at one another, realizing that the walls that separated them were not glass, nor marble, nor carpet, but the untested courage to be human. The janitor exhales a small sound and feels the tension in his shoulders ease just a fraction. He realizes that he has changed something. Not the billionaire, not the company, not yet, but something inside the walls, something invisible, something that will ripple outward, quietly, relentlessly. The billionaire nods once, slowly, gravely. He steps back, giving space, returning to his own power, now tempered, now transformed by the courage of someone who had none of the tools he had, yet possessed something stronger. Around them, the hall is quiet but awake, 1,000 minds processing, 1,000 hearts turning. Every polished surface reflects not just light, but a question. How do we measure worth? How do we measure power? And suddenly, the answer is in the simplest of actions, the smallest of decisions, the courage to do right when it is neither convenient nor rewarded. The janitor feels the room watching him, waiting for him to move, to speak, to falter. But he doesn't. He stands tall, hands unclenching slowly, chest rising, shoulders firm. He feels the gravity of dignity, the weight of human choice, and realizes it is heavier than any mop, stronger than any hierarchy, more enduring than any marble floor. Outside the hall, whispers start to rise again, but now they carry a different tone, softer, curious, reverent. The storm is not over, but the first cracks in its cloud have formed. The billionaire steps aside, letting the janitor be seen, not as an employee, not as a janitor, not as someone who crossed invisible lines, but as a human being, whole and capable, unbound by the expectations of others. And for the first time in this building, power shifts, subtly but undeniably, not through money, not through title, not through fear, but through a simple act of integrity, a moment of courage, a refusal to let fear dictate action. The janitor's heart pounds, not from fear, but from understanding. He has witnessed and been a part of a reversal so profound that it will echo in the halls long after they leave, long after lights dim, long after the polished floors are swept clean again. The morning sunlight slants through the towering windows of the building, spilling across the marble floors, catching in the edges of polished tables and glass panels. But today, the light feels different. It doesn't just illuminate, it softens. The halls hum, But there is no tension, no invisible weight pressing down on shoulders. Instead, there's movement, quiet, deliberate, as if the building itself has learned to breathe. The janitor walks through it, mop bucket rolling behind him, dripping quietly, leaving small puddles that seem less like messes today and more like footprints in a story being written. The air smells of coffee, of fresh paint, and something else, something lighter, like hope finally finding a place to rest. He feels it in his chest before he can name it. The world he walks through is the same city, the same structure, but the lines that once pressed in, that forced him to shrink, have softened. The rewards that follow are quiet, understated, almost invisible to those who do not notice small miracles. A scholarship comes in a letter, slipped onto his desk with neat handwriting that doesn't shout, that doesn't demand attention. It is a lifeline disguised as a piece of paper. A management training position is offered next, a place where he will be seated at tables once forbidden, where his voice will count and his ideas will be heard. These are not grand spectacles, not announcements that require applause or cameras. They are promises kept quietly, as if dignity itself has decided to manifest without ceremony. The janitor's hand shakes slightly when he reads the letters, fingers brushing over the paper, as though feeling the weight of something larger than words, larger than expectation, larger than the world that tried to overlook him. The guard who once blocked the doors, the same hand that once raised in judgment, is reassigned, not punished, not humiliated, but taught. He walks the halls with eyes wider, ears more attentive, learning what he never thought he needed. How to see people, how to hear them, how to weigh actions not by hierarchy, but by humanity. And the executives, those polished suits who once rehearsed smiles and respect like scripts, attend workshops that start with listening. Real listening. Not nodding for show, not pretending, but letting the world speak first, letting voices that were muted rise, and learning that authority carries weight only when tempered with care. The building hums differently now, a low vibration of life that feels alive, that responds, that remembers. The billionaire walks through it all without an entourage. There are no assistants hovering, no security flanking him, no walls of silence protecting him from the people he built this empire around. He walks alone, sometimes pause and ask a question, sometimes smiling at a familiar face, sometimes remembering a name he shouldn't. There's humility in his steps, a rhythm of quiet accountability that was never required before, and yet now feels like the natural order of things. He stops at a corner one afternoon and finds a janitor, mop in hand, bucket in tow, standing in the same elevator where everything began. The memory of that first encounter hangs in the air like a soft pulse. The elevator doors slide open and close again, but this time there is no tension, no judgment, only shared silence that carries a new weight. They ride together, side by side, the space small but comfortable. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words, the kind that has witnessed the shift of an entire hierarchy without a single battle fought. You reminded me why I built this place. The billionaire says finally, voice soft, almost reverent. The janitor's lips curve into a small, steady smile. He doesn't say anything. Words are unnecessary. The walls of the elevator, the reflective mirrors, the hum of the cables, everything holds the memory of a test, a challenge, a choice made quietly but boldly. The floors move beneath them, rising, carrying them together through space and to the weight of unspoken acknowledgement. Outside, the city moves like it always has, loud and fast, indifferent to the shifts inside. Cars honk. People hurry. Life presses forward as it does every day. But inside these walls, inside this building, something has changed. People look up. They look at each other. They measure each other differently. The air tastes different, heavier with possibility, lighter with respect, richer with understanding. Power still exists. Money still matters. Titles are not erased. But kindness now has weight. The building breathes differently, responded to choices once unseen, to courage once ignored, to integrity once invisible. The janitor moves down the halls with a sense of quiet ownership, not of wealth, not of title, but of something far more enduring. The knowledge that standing for what is right, no matter how small, leaves an imprint that cannot be erased. People watch him, some with curiosity, some with tentative admiration, others with quiet shame. Every glance, every step, Every nod carries the invisible weight of lesson learned without words. Dignity has consequences. Humanity carries power, and small acts are never truly small. The billionaire pauses again, looking down a hallway where a young intern hesitates with a stack of papers. He stops, smiles, and asks, "Can I help you with that?" The gesture is ordinary, but the lesson is extraordinary. It is not about who is above or below, not about what belongs or who deserves, but about noticing, about choosing to act when the world teaches indifference. The janitor watches quietly, mop in hand, knowing that his simple act, the choice to walk beside a man yesterday, created ripples now moving through walls, floors, and hearts. The building feels alive, full of tension transformed into opportunity, fear transformed into respect, hierarchy transformed into connection. Later, in the cafeteria, the janitor sits with his lunch finally, the tray still warm, untouched for too long. But he doesn't eat yet. He listens. He watches. Colleagues talk differently now. Their voice is softer, their laughter lighter. No one dares to whisper cruelly. No one dares to ignore. The lessons of yesterday and of the day before have seeped into the marble and glass, into the carpets in the hallways, into the reflections in every polished surface. The building itself has learned, somehow, to hold a space for decency, to measure success not just in profit, but in humanity. Outside, the city continues its chaos, uncaring and unrelenting. But inside these walls, time feels different. Moments stretch, weight lingers, actions echo. The janitor moves with purpose now, mop dripping, bucket rolling, every step a testament to courage made visible. He meets eyes with a few of the younger employees, nods slightly, and sees recognition, admiration, curiosity, respect mirrored back at him. Not because of his title, not because of money, not because of ambition, but because he acted when it mattered, when it counted, when no one else would. The billionaire follows him, step soft, voice low, laughter absent, gravity present. "Remember," he says as they pass a polished conference room, "you taught me more than I thought anyone could." The janitor nods, the weight of the words sinking in, heavier than any mop, more enduring than any floor cleaned, more profound than any salary. The lesson is simple, almost invisible, and yet impossible to ignore. True power is measured in humanity. True courage is measured in the choices no one sees. True reward comes to those who act with dignity, when the world tells them to stay small. By the end of the day, the janitor returns to the elevator where it all began. The doors close. He stands quietly, hands still, heart steady, reflection staring back at him. Outside, the world rushes, loud and indifferent. Inside, everything has shifted. Kindness, he realizes, has weight. Integrity cannot be ignored. The simplest act of walking beside someone, of choosing humanity over fear, creates consequences beyond comprehension. Every heart in that building carries it now. Every conscience is aware, and the lesson settles deep. You never know who is testing you. You never know who you are becoming. In a world that measures worth by status and silence, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply walk beside someone who's been told they don't belong. The elevator hums, carrying him upward, carrying lessons unseen, carrying dignity like a weight that finally matters. The halls are quiet now. People pause in doorways, glance at one another, and remember, the building breathes. The sunlight drifts across the floors like a blessing. The janitor pushes his mop bucket, small but steady, and feels the weight of kindness, the gravity of simple truth, and the unstoppable force of humanity itself. It is quiet. It is heavy. It is alive. And it will never be the same.